Welcome to Build That Rental, a series of informational events designed to support and educate small developers, builders, and property owners on creating rental properties in our community. First, we want to extend our sincere gratitude to our sponsors whose support made this event series possible: All Care Health, Mid-Rogue Foundation, Common Connections, the Grants Pass and Josephine County Chamber of Commerce, the City of Grants Pass, the Grants Pass City Housing Advisory Council, and the Greater Grants Pass Rotary Club. This initiative comes in response to the housing shortage and rising rental costs in our region by bringing together industry professionals to share their expertise. We hope to provide valuable insights and resources to help navigate the complexities of rental property development, from land use codes and financing to construction and incentives. Tonight we begin this evening by addressing regional, state and federal incentives for building, including energy efficiency incentives and universal design incentives that support lifelong residency for housing stability. We look forward to an informative discussion and encourage you to participate. Thank you for being here, and let's get started.
Tonight's subject is incentives for construction and energy incentives, and also a brief on some tenant assistance programs. So first up is going to be Connie Saldana with Rogue Valley Council of Governments, and she's going to talk about various incentives that other communities besides just Grants Pass are doing. In case you're interested in building in Jackson County somewhere or in Connie.
Okay, thank you. Bad thing about this is I'm right underneath the slides, so and somebody else is doing them. My name is Connie Saldana. I work for Rogue Valley Council of Governments. It's a two-county quasi-governmental organization. There is literally a council of governments that has representatives from all of the cities, the counties, the colleges, the universities, and water district. All those kind of governmental organizations get together once a month and talk about and plan for our area. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, so why do governments have incentives? I'm mainly talking today about incentives from governments. And that's because they want you to build for their people. And all governments virtually by now have had to do an assessment of what the needs are in their community. And we all are very familiar with the fact that there's a shortage of low-income housing, especially. So they have their plans, and so how can they get you to join in on their plan? Well, they offer incentives, and the incentives can take two forms. One is where they're actually offering to make your work easier by providing waivers to certain zoning or building code rules that make it easier for you if they're reduced or actually eliminated, if you're producing the right kind of housing that they want. Some incentives actually involve money. For instance, there's some that have tax incentives, some that are maybe, what would be another good example? Oh yeah, sometimes they reduce SDCs, and sometimes they even have grants that are available. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, next slide. Okay, oh yeah, just go.
Hold it on there.
Yeah, keep going. Okay, so their plans say that they need to either increase affordable housing, which is a certain percentage of area median income, or maybe they want to encourage workforce housing. They want more families to move into their area. So that would be a different kind of housing that you would be providing as you're building rentals. My work at Rogue Valley Council of Governments is to promote accessible housing for people who want to age in place. And so very few jurisdictions, but some do offer incentives for building accessible homes. I'll talk just a little bit about it at the end. I won't make you sit through my whole presentation on accessible housing. But sometimes they've reached the edge of their urban growth boundary, and they just want to encourage infill. And a good way to do that, for instance, is with accessory dwelling units. And I noticed there's even paperwork back there about accessory dwelling units. Sorry, I'm talking too fast. I don't know why I'm out of breath. So let's look at what area median income looks like around here. So in Grants Pass, the very lowest affordability, or for the lowest income people, is 30% of the area median income, which in Grants Pass is $17,063. So that is not a lot of income. But so virtually all of the housing in that category would be subsidized by the government in some way. And there are many programs through the state. And I think you could consider the subsidy an incentive. I noticed as I was looking at what the jurisdictions around here offer, a lot of them provide benefits if you provide housing for 80% of area median income. So that means would be for a one-person household. That household could have up to $45,000. Okay, so that's what the area median income is all about. You'll see that a lot in incentives that the jurisdictions are offering. So let's see, let's get an idea of what some possible incentives are. So next slide, please. Next one. Okay, so we've talked about fee waivers. They could, well, it's a little different than SDCs, but the fees that you pay to get your permits, it can lower those. They can allow you to build more units per acre or per lot than might ordinarily be permitted. And that is especially interesting with ADUs. Maybe they want to encourage you by not requiring that you have so many parking spaces for the number of units that you're building. So they can modify that. Every jurisdiction that has community development block grant funds, which are a federal source of funding that comes down to certain communities in our area. Grants Pass is one, Josephine County is one. I believe Central Point is, not positive about that. Medford definitely, Talent, and Ashland are all CDBG communities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that is where the community decides how to spend those funds, and the community has input in how the government will spend those funds. Okay, and maybe it could be for a home repair or upgrade or new construction. It's up to the jurisdiction to decide what they want to encourage. Okay, next slide. Okay, I mentioned they might lower their SDCs if you build a certain kind of housing, or they could offer a payment plan, so you don't have to pay all the SDCs up front. Medford has an interesting thing where they have pre-approved plans for accessory dwelling units. They have like 6 plans. One of them is accessible. And so if you choose one of those plans, they speed up the permitting process. So that's another way they can make things easier for you. Some jurisdictions offer quite a bit of technical assistance. And some jurisdictions also have local housing trust funds, which you can apply for. as a builder. Okay, next slide. Oh, one thing I did want to do is give an example of how a city, for instance, could put together a package to encourage the building of more accessory dwelling units. First of all, they could offer those pre-approved plans, like I mentioned, and fast track the permitting process. And of course, we know that all the time that you can save by not sitting around waiting for permits to be approved is better for your business, more profitable. They could reduce the SDCs. They could allow on-street parking. They could also allow accessible units to have increased square footage, more than their original plan had indicated. Or sometimes they'll even allow you to build an extra unit on the lot. I know this is used a lot in the Portland area, and I think Portland just got the fad going for the whole state, because now I hear almost every area talking about increasing ADUs. Okay, so I did create a handout that has the incentives that are offered by all jurisdictions in our area. This is based on what I could find out from their website. There's probably more. And you're going to hear details from Amber and Doug about what specifically Grants Pass offered. But I thought maybe some of you might want to build in other areas, Jackson and Josephine counties. So my two handouts, this one and another one, are back on that round table back there. Okay, there was some great new legislation that just passed, sponsored by Representative Pam Marsh from our area. And there are a lot of incentives to build affordable housing, additional incentives. So we'll see how that comes out after they make the rules and things like that. But it's definitely in favor of people who want to build rentals. The state offers, the state, Oregon Housing and Community Services, is basically a financing pass-through agency. A lot of its money comes from the federal government, but it also comes from the Oregon legislature. And so if you go to their website, you'll see a lot of different programs. Most of them are about funding the construction, which, as I mentioned, is a form of incentive. And their website is ohcs.gov. Next, please. Okay, I mentioned that I was going to talk a little more about community development block grant communities. So every community that has a CDBG grant from the federal government, a certain amount can be set aside for infrastructure projects or whatever the city wants to do. But there's also a certain portion that has to be spent for community things. And that's always done with a comprehensive plan. And comprehensive plans require citizen input. So if you pay attention to when your jurisdiction is going ahead with developing their comprehensive plan, you can go to meetings and you can say, we need blah, 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 whatever it is that would make it easier for you to build the type of housing we know they already want. So it's a unique little place where you can give input and make a difference. Okay, next. Okay, so I mentioned that my program is about accessible housing, and I just want to make sure I don't forget anything. I want to explain why it's a good idea for you to build at least some of your units that are accessible. And it's not ADA accessible. ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, actually pertains to public buildings. Now, if you are funded with federal funds, then you do have to follow ADA. But just if you're just building privately, accessibility means ease of access for any resident in that house. Everybody can live in a home that's accessible. And it's about for older people who want to age in place, or even not older people who want to age in place. It makes sense to make your house safer. And that's what accessibility is all about, preventing falls. If you talk with Brett Moore of Twin Creeks, he will tell you that every house in his, or we've certified, and I'll tell you about certifying in a minute, more than 100 houses in his development. And so I asked him, well, how much more does it cost you to build an accessible home than a home that's the way you've built them always? And he says it's about 2% more, because you have to put the pan under the shower, and you guys know the appliances and things like that. I asked our housing authority, the housing authority in Jackson County, how much it costs them to make an apartment accessible, and they said it's about 4% more than their regular apartments. I'm saying this as if you start from the plan stage. Anybody knows that remodels are horrendously expensive. So if you want to do that to your current home, you're going to pay a lot of money. But if a builder builds that into the beginning, that doesn't cost that much more money in the end. And the demand is growing. I'm a baby boomer. Might be some more in this room. We know that the market is growing for homes where people want to age in place. So it just really makes monetary sense for you to think about building at least some units that are accessible. Often older adults and people with disabilities make good tenants because they're on a steady income, fixed income, which is usually low, but nevertheless, they also care for their place to live because it's so hard for them to find a place where they can live. The reason I even got into this accessibility business is that our advisory council members who use wheelchairs were telling me terrible stories about how they tried to make a house that wasn't accessible work, or how the realtor told them this house was accessible and it wasn't really accessible. And we just need more accessible units. We're not even close to covering the need. So my program certifies homes that are accessible, so that if a home is certified, it can go on the Southern Oregon Multiple Listing Service, so that someone who's looking for a home to age in place can find it. Their realtor can find it. And we're doing this. It's on the MLS in Eugene, Salem, and the metro area. So around the state, people are starting to become aware that maybe they should be looking for a house that they want to move into and stay in for the rest of their lives. So on the back is the checklist that we use to assess a home. And we assess the home at one of three levels. The first is visitable, which means that someone in a wheelchair can come to that house and visit you. And maybe your mother-in-law you'd like to visit, but maybe you'd like your mother-in-law to live there. In which case, you might want to go to level 2, which is on here, which is a home that's fully accessible. The person that lives in that house, on the main floor of that house, that they can get to through a no-step entrance, they can do all of the tasks of daily living. They can do everything they need to do on their own. I mean, if they need a caregiver, that's, I would consider that still on their own. And then we have level 3, which is a house that has already been adapted for someone with a specific disability. Like maybe it has a ceiling trap, or maybe it has monitoring for dementia, or many other things that are kind of specialized that we wouldn't expect the builder would put in to start with. So that is all that I had to share about both incentives and accessibility, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about either of those topics.
You all know about this, and you were referring to some appliances or maybe things that we do in our homes to make it more accessible.
Right.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
Okay. Well, I just assumed, you know what they may say about assumptions, that builders would know what it would take to make a house accessible, but that's why we have this list. You can take a look at it and see what it takes to become accessible to a person, ultimately, who might have to use a wheelchair in the end, or mobility impairment, maybe they use a walker. What it would take to make the house, and all the different, this has features in all the different rooms that you can think about. And so help yourself to that and share it. Yes. No, you're just selling what that house has. You know, I don't, if you have a person move in there and it doesn't meet their needs, they have the right to ask you if they can make the modifications and pay for them themselves. And then they have to take them when they leave. But advertising that doesn't obligate you, but it does let people know where they can find your place. Yes.
I just want to say in favor of accessibility, it's not always just about aging in place. Accidents can happen to anybody at any point in time. It might be temporary, but when it makes it so you can't go home because your home isn't accessible, then it becomes a monetary crisis for somebody sometimes if you have to stay in a rehab facility, which could impact the rent. Yeah. So having accessible buildings in the first place can make a really big difference for the stability of the tenant for the long run.
Common sense, yeah. And I mean, looking at it from a governmental point of view, it makes so much more sense to have people be able to stay at home, because paying for their care at home is a lot less expensive than putting them even in assisted living, but heaven forbid they should have to go to skilled nursing. And so since the government is in charge of paying for those services for low-income people, it's a concern to us. Yeah. Plus, who wouldn't rather live at home than in a facility? You know, that's just a consumer choice. Yes.
We talk about all of these incentives, but where do we actually go to apply for them? How do we find them? What are the websites?
Yeah, good question. Well, I would start with, and you're going to have an excellent presentation on Grants Pass, first of all, and they will, I'm certain, tell you how you access them. But I just found out specifics about each city by going to their own website. And then they'll tell you, and you would probably contact their planning department, how do I get X benefit? How can I lower my SDCs on the next house that I'm building? If whatever, you know. So I gave you a list of some potential incentives, and you'll see that different cities use different strategies. They're just strategies about how to get the type of housing that they want there for their citizens. Yes?
So, Connie, I guess it's kind of tailing on to your question then. So what you created was by your own effort. So does Grove Valley Council of Governments, RVCOG, keep a comprehensive list of what incentives?
No.
So you don't.
No, we don't know. I have just been studying incentives for quite some time because I want to encourage accessibility. And I worked a lot with Pam Marsh, who came up with this great legislation that just passed. And she's had actually housing legislation passed for the last few sessions that are really good for the people that we serve. And, but anyway, you have to do a little research on your own. But this will give you a clue of what different jurisdictions do around here. You know, what their thinking is in terms of how to get you to build what they need for their. But I will say there is some about Josephine County in the handout, and nothing about Jackson County. I couldn't find any actual incentives on the website. I can find all about their plans because they definitely want affordable housing, but I just probably need to make a better connection there for Jackson. Any other questions?
I would add one thing that incentives are fairly dynamic. And so they do change. I don't want to say the general concepts change regularly, but funding amounts that are available to subsidize something changes regularly.
Yes.
So it's something recent legislation or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Or this, we have so much money and it's been extended.
Yeah.
The following year it's rebooted, or 2 years later it's rebooted. So it is dynamic, and it is something you have to do some research on and realize, okay, I'm 10 months out of the ability when I can technically apply for this thing.
Yeah.
Does that timing work or not?
And
And
I'm
so-
the only one, but it's a matter of, am I waiting 2 years to start this or 1 year? Or, yeah, the STCs may know upfront.
Right. Well, that's one reason you might want to contact the planning department where you're planning to build, because a lot of them will offer, probably all of them will offer you technical assistance and help you answer that question. I think it's in one way very propitious that we're talking about this now, as this new legislation is passed that's intentionally meant to incentivize housing, more money coming from the state, 2 jurisdictions. So you guys are hearing it first. No, you're not really hearing it first, but pay attention to what's coming down. Thank you. Don't forget to get your handouts.
Thank you, Connie. The next presentation is from Kimberly, and I can't remember Kimberly's last name.
Low.
Kimberly Lowe. She's with our local HUD office, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the programs they have there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kimberly Lowe. I'm with the Josephine Housing and Community Development Council, oftentimes referred to as the Housing Council or the Josephine Housing Council. Most of the time, we're referred to as HUD. However, that's not who we are. Our agency was, we could move to the next slide, and the next one. Our agency was created in 1974 to address 2 basic, huge concepts. One, to allow handicapped individuals, either physically, mentally, or socioeconomically, to access market housing. And the second was to improve the existing housing stock and help it to be maintained and or develop affordable housing. The agency, we operate under our own bylaws. We're not a part of the county, the city, the state, or the federal government. We are a public housing authority created in combination with the state of Oregon's Public Housing Authority law. So we are a housing authority. We are obligated to follow the federal regulations. Where allowed, we develop our own rules in determining how we're going to comply with those federal regulations. We're also obligated to respond to the state requirements and any local requirements that might be applicable to our agency. Next slide. What I did want to say was that our agency operates under a board that's appointed by our county commissioners. And then our director, Tammy D'Amico, is responsible for running the day-to-day operations of that agency under the direction of our bylaws and our board. So we offer a couple of different types of programs. Our basic program is the tenant-based program. It's the Housing Choice Voucher. It's a Section 8 program through Housing and Urban Development, and it's the most common. Citizens who are in need of help paying rent apply to our waiting list, assuming they wish to live in Josephine County. And then the current waiting period is approximately 9 to 12 months. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer, because we are granted or awarded money on a calendar year, and based on whether or not we can assist all of the vouchers that we've been awarded or pay the rents for a particular number of those vouchers, whichever happens first is where we stop. So if we're given enough funding to assist 50 households, then that's how many we can help. But if we're given enough funding to assist 100, then we'll do 100 and maybe go farther if we have enough vouchers to fill. The program has availability, and we invite people off of our waiting list based on available funding and or vouchers that are available to provide assistance to. When families leave the program, that creates money and vouchers available to be used for the next family. Okay. When applicants apply to the waiting list, they have to be within a certain income limit, and then we verify their eligibility, educate them about how to use our rental assistance in the open market. Based on the family's income, they're giving a shopping amount for the rent and utilities that they can shop for in our community. And then they go out and apply for units to rent from landlords. If they pass the landlord's requirements for an acceptable tenant and the landlord accepts them, they've got a unit. The tenant will come in, pick up some paperwork. It's a rather daunting packet. But once it's filled out, that's probably the most amount of paperwork you'll fill out during your work with our agency. The tenant will bring you the packet. The landlord is to fill it out. It provides a great amount of information to the landlord and confirms information that the tenant's already been given about the rent and utilities that they should be shopping for. If the family doesn't find a unit to rent within the 120 days that they've been given to shop for a unit, then their time frame expires, they're dropped from the waiting list, and they would need to reapply to go through the process again at the next batch of funding availability. When applying to the waiting list, clients are also given an option to select the project-based voucher program, which is on the next slide. This one here. We can go back one. Thank you. So the project-based voucher program is a program where housing authorities are allowed to designate up to 20% of their available vouchers for project basing. So what that means is the normal waiting list, the assistance stays with the tenant family. They can go out anywhere in the community, take their voucher, and rent a unit. In the project-based program, a family would respond or identify whether or not they're interested in this particular program, where the assistance stays with the unit. Okay, so we would contract with a developer, landlord, for whatever type of housing you might have, and the assistance would stay in that particular unit for a period of time. There is no particular number of project-based vouchers that are not allowed. We typically like to develop contracts with builders or owners for a period of 10 or more years, which allows us to keep the affordable housing in the community. Now, this is something that we haven't done a whole lot of in the past, but we're doing it now. And so, project-based vouchers. So if you've contracted with our agency for project-based assistance in your complex, then when there's a vacancy in that particular rental, you let us know, and we send you a list of people off of our waiting list who appear to be eligible for your bedroom size unit. You screen them for eligibility, and whichever of the tenants you choose, going by first come, first serve basis, because that's how we operate, then we would assist the tenant that you accept, assuming they're eligible for rental assistance, because even though you accept them in this program, we still have to complete final eligibility processing to be sure that they're eligible for assistance in that particular unit. Okay. So the project-based voucher program has some caps. It's 25 units or 25% of the complex. So we can't go over, but we can be within those timeframes. So if you have 10 units, then we could assist with project-based vouchers, all 10, assuming that we have the vouchers available or the funding available to assist 10 people when your development is ready to lease. Okay. We can add to that 25% if you've got more than 25 units if the units are specifically designated for the elderly, or secondly, provide supportive services to the tenants in that complex. So let's say, currently there is work that we've provided project-based vouchers in for homeless youth. And so the Maslow Project screens families that are ready to graduate from their program and go into housing of their own with supportive services. So the Maslow Project helps the family to meet all of the needs that are necessary to be a good tenant and family, pay their bills, get ready to get a job. Whatever it is that the family needs help getting through in life's terms, the Maslow Project will help them achieve those goals and move through the process. So if we were to provide project-based vouchers and choose that Maslow program for services to the complex, then Maslow agrees that all of the tenants in the complex could come to them for help managing their life skills to a point that they're comfortable with or graduating through their programs. That's just an example of a process where that happens. Families who choose to participate in supportive services could graduate from the program and remain in the project-based voucher unit for so long as they remain eligible for the rental assistance program. It's important that developers know that in working with us through the project-based voucher program, federal regulations require if you have more than 8 project-based vouchers assigned to your complex, you ask for 25, then you'll be obligated to comply with the Davis-Bacon prevailing wage rules. And those rules for Southern Oregon are vastly different than they are anywhere else in the state. Well, there's a couple of areas, but So it's important for developers to know what those prevailing wage rates are in Southern Oregon. We've had a couple of developers from up north come to Grants Pass. We told them this and they didn't understand. And the cost of those wage requirements threw the complex out of affordability to be developed. So keep in mind, do some research and double check on what those things are. But 8 is the magic number. If you go to 9, Davis-Bacon applies. I've listed here the different types of units that can be eligible for project-based vouchers: single family, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. They can be single buildings, multiple buildings on the same piece of property. It cannot be, what's the word here? Scattered site housing. So it can't be 2 units on this block and 2 units 3 streets over. The property has to be, all of the units have to be contiguous, touching on one point or another in order to be eligible for the project-based voucher program. Now, we can choose to provide assistance in existing housing, in new construction, or rehabilitated housing. So that could help some of the local builders in using the project-based vouchers to fund the project that you're developing. Currently, we've only assisted or been approached by builders with new affordable housing. The builders we've worked with have accessed funding through Oregon Housing Community Services, through the low-income housing tax credit programs, or the local innovative funding track, fast track. And so either the LIHTC or the LIFT funding from Oregon Housing. And in those processes, sometimes there's additional funding that can be awarded because you're working with a housing authority. A lot of times that'll help increase your point factor in the process for applications. Next slide, please. So once we've gotten the environmental review process completed, and actually I'd like to back up for a second. So you decide that you want to build this group of affordable housing, and you contact us and say, hey, do you have any project-based vouchers available? We can say yes or no and let you know. Then we can talk about that and discuss the requirements. And then we will advertise through a request for proposal to the community to identify that we have these vouchers available. So any and all who want to apply feel welcome to do so. You'll have about 30 days to gather your information and apply for the project-based vouchers. We'll award based on the criteria we've identified as needing to be met, and then provide you with documentation that, assuming you get funded or have funding and meet the requirements of the environmental review and the subsidy layering review, then we will sign an agreement to enter into a housing assistance payments contract, because there are particular timeframes that you're required to meet in order for those project-based vouchers to be held for your project. That way, we're not on the hook for providing assistance to a project that doesn't get off the ground for 5 years, kind of thing. The next piece is that in project-based voucher complexes, the rents have to be affordable and reasonable according to non-assisted rental units of like type. So 2-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever. They have to fall within the open market rent prices. In place eligible families. So if you were doing a rehab, the unit would have to be not fitting within the housing quality standards requirements in order to be eligible for funding. If by chance you have existing tenants in the project at that time, those tenants are protected. And what will happen is that those tenants would be given a preference on our waiting list, be required to enter it, and as soon as your project is completed, they get the project-based voucher assistance in their units. So the project-based voucher contracts can be from 1 to 20 years. So you're guaranteed rent from us for eligible households for a period of that contract. If we agree on an initial 10-year contract, any extensions that we might make cannot be extended beyond 20 years in total. So you can get an additional 20, but not 45, because we only did one in the beginning. That didn't pan out in calculations, but really, I'm the accountant and I can't do math. So that's the process for the project-based vouchers. If you'll move to the next slide, please. Now, as a housing authority, maybe you don't want project-based vouchers. You'd just like to partner with us because we bring tax exemption. So if you are looking to develop a property, you need some extra funding, or in the breakdown of your development, you need some help, consider making us a partner in your project. In doing so, we can provide the tax exemption for your project, assuming that the units are going to be affordable. And we require a fee of 10% of the developer fee and an annual fee beyond that to cover our services. So whether or not that pans out for you as a developer in having so many years worth of tax exemption in your project is something to think about. And another way to add us into your mix, have tax exemption for the full period that our agreement remains in effect. Will that pan out for you and make it more affordable to develop? So these are the complexes that we've worked in currently. We own Harbeck Village. It was built in 1995. Well, it was built before then, became occupiable in 1995. There's 48 units in that complex. 2 to 3 bedroom units, 2 to 4. 2 to 4 bedroom units are in that complex. It'll remain affordable for so long as we are a part of it. Cathedral Square, which was just currently completed, is on the corner of Harbeck and Grandview Lane. There are 54 units of affordable housing in that complex. We broke ground with Nebraska Trail, which is on the corner of Ramsey Avenue and Nebraska Avenue. And we're looking forward to that. Currently, I heard this earlier this afternoon, that it's 12% complete. So I expect it to be the first amongst the group to be developed. We're also partnering with Allen Creek Crossing with the Housing Authority of Jackson County. They are our developer because they have a development team. They're a bigger housing authority than we are. So we partner with them. They develop. We provide the tax exemption, and we get 68 units of affordable housing on the corner of Allen Creek and West Harbeck Road. The other project that we're working on is Hillcrest Village. While we don't have any project-based vouchers there, there's tax exemption, and it helped make the complex just a bit more affordable for the developer. And last but not least, and the biggest project that we're looking forward to, is currently presumed to be named Allen Creek. It will be 113 units of affordable housing. There will be apartments, townhomes, duplexes, and it will include eventually 20 affordable home ownership units as well. So 130 units in total. That complex is, I say, on the corner of Allenwood and Williams Highway. That project has applied for funding and is on a waiting list. So we're moving forward. I say we. The developer is moving forward in accomplishing all of the things necessary for that complex to come to fruition. There will be a second driveway or entrance to that complex coming off of Williams Highway. So there'll be two ways of accessing the complex. And we're hoping, next slide. So these are some important references. Really, if you want to go to HUDPBV.com or just enter HUD PBV programs, it'll take you to the website for HUD, and all of this information is available there on their website so that you can get specific instruction about each of the steps that are outlined. Thank you. Thank you to Doug for inviting us to present. Thank you for your attendance, and we hope to be able to consider partnering with some of you as you reach out. Thank you. Yes. Sure.
Can you give just a brief overview of how someone would actually, or how a developer would come to you, what the process would be when they say, hey, I'm interested in doing this, how can I partner with you and move through the process? Is it, do they come to a council meeting? How do they start that relationship?
I would suggest just emailing our executive director, Tammy D'Amico. So it would be tammy.jhcdc.net, and let her know that you're interested in developing. You've got this plan going on and could use some extra funds or tax exemption. How can we make this work? And that's really, if we have somebody reach out to us, then we'll present a request for proposal, assuming we have funding available and the vouchers to go with it, or project-based vouchers to exchange from our Section 8 housing choice voucher into the PBVs. Okay. Currently, today, we have 16 units designated to the various coming soon projects, and we're waiting for HUD to tell us whether or not we have enough funding to get through November and December. So, and I believe we do, because in the most recent bill released, 2026 budget included retroactive payment for 2025 from October to the end of the year. So the feds know they didn't give us enough money to get through the year. They needed to do something and go through some amount of work to identify what they had left to present for the rest of the year. How much we'll have, I don't know. The wording is no families will lose their rental assistance because of lack of funding. So that's the guarantee so far. So just reach out to us and let us know, and we'll work with you as much as we can. Any other questions?
Yeah, Kim, I got one. So I'm a little fuzzy then. So do your offices offer some sort of grants or something for the actual cost of construction, or is it just the subsidies in the rents into the future?
Just the subsidies in the rents. However, depending on if you're applying to Oregon Housing and Community Services for the low-income housing tax credits to help with development, or if you're considering going through the local innovative, thank you, fast track funding, I drew a blank, then either of those application processes may offer funding to the housing authority in order to contribute to the development. It's called a general housing assistance payment, general housing account payment. And those funds are to help the developer in their development. It could be 25,000, it could be 800,000. It depends on the year, what's going on with Oregon Housing Community Services and the batch of funding that you're seeking and what they have to spend. So we could bring those things depending on the size of your project and what OHCS has to offer. Yes?
How is the determination made that it's affordable?
Based on the area median income and the income levels of the tenants that you're choosing to serve. So if your rents are going to be within the range that would qualify for our program, it's based on the fair market rents that we are assigned for our county by HUD. And then if your income limits for your clients' tenants in that complex fit within that bracket, then that determines affordability. There's also the consideration about that affordability includes not just the rent, but the tenant paid utilities as well. Okay.
Earlier you talked about a gotcha with something called Davis payment. Could you explain just what that is really briefly?
Yes, in 1937, if memory's recalling the right dates, it was a requirement that the federal government in developments of affordable housing pay a decent wage. Okay, so that over the years has been determined to be specific rates within different areas. So it's like the cost of living. Well, the rates for that act in Southern Oregon vastly exceed the cost or the wage that's required for developments in Portland. Different wages. And I don't know what's behind that. Maybe they think that the workers from Portland have to come to big old rural Josephine County down here at the other end of the state to work, so they need to be paid more. I don't know the philosophy behind it other than it's about paying fair wage. And so it's just that the wage for our area is way out of line with what's required in other areas of the state.
I just have one question. What are some of the biggest myths that you have been approached with of why a landlord would not utilize your service?
Big brother involvement, the rules that are required in working with our program. And really, our program requires that the unit pass housing quality standards, which are a basic requirement for units to meet in order to be eligible for our program. There are rules about when an eviction can take place if you don't give, if you want to evict somebody and don't want to give a notice, a reason why. HUD requires that for certain kinds of evictions, no cause, you have to give it at a certain time of the month. Otherwise, landlords are free to comply with Oregon law however they choose to do. And we expect that you would act on those rights as a landlord in Oregon to require the tenant to meet the terms of the lease.
On your slide that you talked about the project-based vouchers, you referred to that the rents could not be subsidized rents, or the evaluation was one piece of it. How much of a difference is there between, I want to throw out, I'll use the word market rent, and what's on your schedule? Is there a huge difference?
No. And what we find, though, is if a landlord chose to provide a rent increase for their rental and it fit within a reasonable realm, then the thinking is that if I raise it high enough, I don't have to consider low-income tenants because they can't afford that rate. That's the one piece. However, when we come to affordability, rents for units that we provide assistance to have to be comparable to 3 other non-assisted rental units of the same makeup. Okay, and that's not difficult to do in our community, and so there used to be an issue with that, but HUD's gotten so much better at being more accurate with the assignment of the fair market rents in our community than they used to, and some of the other rules have changed. Assisted clients initially cannot pay more than 40% of their adjusted income for rent and tenant paid utilities. We give them the amount of rent to shop for when we educate them about using our assistance and how to go find a unit to rent. So they have that information initially. Now, if they're unable to work and they don't have any income, that's going to make their ability to find a unit to rent a lot more difficult in this market because rents are climbing. They're high. And so those families who are super, what we call extremely low income, might have a little bit more difficulty finding a unit to rent that fits within that family's shopping amount because they don't have an income to add to that shopping amount to raise it up into a more affordable realm on the open market, if that makes sense. Thank you, everyone, for providing your feedback and questions. Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and get started. This is Heather McNeil. She is with Energy Trust of Oregon. She's going to talk about probably more than just energy incentives, but whatever it is you're going to do, go ahead.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I want you to do that in a really big way for Mid-Road Foundation for putting this together. Thanks. I don't know if you realize how special this series is. This is something that I think is really unique happening here in Josephine County. And as the Southern Oregon Outreach Manager for Energy Trust, I've been talking this up in other places. So this is exciting to finally be here. So I'm the Southern Oregon Outreach Manager for Energy Trust of Oregon. I've got 20 years experience in construction and architecture, and I've been about 10 years working with Energy Trust of Oregon. And just so I get to know a little bit more about who's here in the room, how many people here are already landlords? Could you raise your hands? Okay. How many of you have, are those rentals single family homes? Okay. Does anybody have apartments? Well, we've got a few. We've got a little everything. That's great. Okay. Just kind of wanted to see. So let's go on to slide number 2. Sorry. So this is a strange one, but why as a landlord should you care about how much money your tenant is forking over to their utility? And here's why. That is money that is coming out of their budget that might be destabilizing them, making it harder for them to pay you rent on time or in full. When their energy bills are lower, that helps secure their financial situation. The next one is, I don't know how many of you have had tenants that are so strapped for cash that they are not using the heating properly or the cooling because they're afraid of what that bill will do. So they're cold in the winter and they're hot in the summer. And this is a risk for your building too, because this can promote mold growth within your building. It can also, in the winter, if you think about it, possibly cause freezing pipes. So there's issues there with risk. If people do not have enough money to run the HVAC system, it can be a problem. Tenants that are comfortable are way more likely to stay too. So for you, in terms of money, that means less vacancy time and less time flipping units, which is all money out of your pocket. Next slide. So why care about this again? Oregon does have some of the lowest utility rates in the state, or in the nation. But they're climbing. I think everybody here is paying those. We all know they're going up and up. It's hurting a little bit more every year. Here in Josephine County, we have some very high rates of what we call energy burden. And this is a number that the state tracks. It's basically anybody who's paying 6% or more of their household income towards their energy bills is considered energy burdened. Josephine County, that's 40% of households. That's a lot of people. So we all probably don't have control over the household income factor, but that utility bill we can make a difference on in how we construct things and how we maintain things over time. And why do we care about that? Because again, you're not paying those bills. The reason why we care about that is because we have massively increasing rates of demand. There are more and more people moving to Oregon. There are more and more energy intensive industries happening. That causes a strain on this system out here. And guess what? They're going to pass along the cost of more power generation and more infrastructure to us as customers. So every time we can save some energy and not have to build another power plant, we are helping keep rates low for everybody. It's not just that one person. We are helping distribute that across everybody throughout the state. Next slide. So I work for Energy Trust of Oregon. And Energy Trust's vision is clean, affordable energy for everyone. Next slide. We are an independent nonprofit. We serve 1.6 million customers in Oregon for the investor-owned utilities. These are the for-profit utilities in the state, which are PGE, Pacific Power, Northwest Natural, Cascade Natural Gas, and Avista Natural Gas. Why just those? Because these companies have monopoly power over your rates. And the state of Oregon basically said, if we are going to allow you to have monopoly power to charge whatever you want, you have to have some sort of energy efficiency programs to help people be able to manage to keep their energy use lower. And rather than do it themselves, we ended up with a nonprofit that's coordinating this across several utilities, and that's Energy Trust of Oregon. So with that, we are looking at, individual projects. We already went through that. Individual projects don't just save that utility payer money, they save everybody money across the state. In Josephine County, we've served 19,000 homes and 1,200 businesses. The total incentives, cash incentives paid to people in Josephine County are over $27 million. But here's the bigger thing, and this is why I want you to really think about this. That $27 million helped achieve more than $81 million in energy savings off of utility bills. So that's a small investment for a lot of savings, and that money is staying here, possibly paying you guys rent, but also doing other really good things within the region. So, next slide. So I think to go into energy in the home, I think before we talk about the incentives, let's talk really quick about a little bit of building science so you know where to put the money when you're doing projects. So we have about 5 areas within a home that you can impact to greatly reduce energy use. So let's go to the next slide. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning are the things that use the most energy in your house. And here's the funny thing. The best thing you can do to modify that is not that equipment, it's insulation. The biggest thing you can do is build your building with as much insulation as possible and seal it up as well as possible. So we're talking about inputting insulation, weather stripping, using better than code windows. So we're not talking about just meeting code, we're talking about rising above code. And then there's some things that can come down to what your tenant does. And either, you don't have to worry about that, or you can provide them some information on that. They need to keep filters clean when it comes to furnaces or even heat pumps. It makes a really big difference on energy consumption. If that fan is working extra hard to push air through a dirty filter, it's using more energy. It's also wearing out the fan a lot sooner, which is going to come back on you. So you want to, help educate your tenants on that. The other one is smart thermostats. Smart thermostats help prevent the human error of, I turned the heat up and then I went out of town over the weekend. So if a smart thermostat, you can set it to at 10 o'clock at night, it's going to turn the heat down when everybody goes to bed, and it turns it back up at 5 or 6 in the morning, or whatever schedule you would like. You can modify that also for vacation schedules and, put it on a much lower setting for the next week. But here's an important thing. If you have a heat pump, you operate it differently. A heat pump does not respond well to big temperature swings. Heat pumps are our most energy efficient way to heat and cool a house, but they work best when they are kept at a really stable temperature, only varying by a couple degrees, because they take a long time to make that difference, and they do it with very little energy. So if you have a heat pump, you don't want to be turning that thermostat up and down all day. You want to find an ideal temperature and keep it there. We have heard from folks that did not understand this, and they invested a lot of money in putting in a heat pump, and then they said, oh my gosh, my bills are even higher. You people lied to me. Well, we didn't lie. You missed that little lesson there that was about setting your thermostat the right way. And as soon as that happens, they start saving energy. So let's go on to the next slide. Appliances. Once again, it goes back to everything that makes something hot or cold in your house is using a lot of energy. So for appliances, that's usually your refrigerator and your washer and dryer. You want to look at life expectancy on these as a landlord and plan to have that money in the pipeline to make these replacements. I would say even 2 years before these average timelines. So a refrigerator has about a 10-year life expectancy. So make sure you're building that in for replacement costs. You want to buy an Energy Star refrigerator. That's pretty easy anymore. You can see that great big label on them in the appliance store, but that is going to help you get a much more efficient refrigerator. Same with washers and dryers. And when it comes to your tenant education, again, using cold water will save them money on the washer and dryer usage, and cleaning that dryer lint out every single time. Next slide. The other thing that's making things hot is your water heater, and it's using 20% of your household energy. Water heaters very often come from the factory set at 140 degrees. This is too hot. This is a scald danger for anybody in the house, but it's also wasting a lot of energy. So one of the very first things you can do when you're putting it in new, but also when you're flipping units, is double check what that setting is. Keep it at 120 degrees. That's going to help prevent burns, but it's also going to save a lot of energy. You can use low flow shower heads and faucet aerators. That's the little thing that you screw onto the faucet, but don't put it on the kitchen faucet. You're just going to make yourself really mad when you're doing dishes or filling like a big pasta vat. Don't go there. It'll be too upsetting on the kitchen faucet. Pipe insulation is another really good one that we see missing in a lot of situations. If you have that great big long pipe running underneath the crawl space or through the attic, make sure it has insulation on it. It's going to save a lot of money. And then this is a moment, if you're going to build new, look at finding a way in your design to reduce the distance of piping in the house. Just by how far away that fixture is from the water heater, you lose a lot of hot water, or a lot of the heat. So if you can centralize things as best as possible with your design, it will save a lot of energy. And that's just thinking through, well, how can I put that water heater close to the kitchen, and how can I make the bathroom adjacent to the kitchen? Doing those things are just simple things at the design stage. They are not simple later. So you want to do it then. Next slide. Lighting. As we all know, LED is pretty much everywhere now. It's required. But the things that aren't required in single-family homes, as well as rental units, is dimmers or occupancy sensors. Some of those things are required in commercial buildings, and you'll find them in commercial building bathrooms and such, but they do save energy so that when nobody's in the room, that light will go out. Or for exterior lighting, it's going to automatically turn off at dawn and turn on at dusk, and nobody has to remember to do that. It's going to save some energy at your properties. Next slide. So the little things that your tenants plug in and that you plug in your own homes, these don't add up to a whole lot. But if you are really, really ambitious and you want to knock that energy efficiency down even further, you find a way to unplug or take these offline every time, because they're all drawing power. That power cord that's plugged into the wall but not plugged into your phone, it's stealing a little power. Your microwave, it's stealing a little power. So some people that are really rigorous about that, they have plug strips so they can turn them off, or they even design in a master switch for each room that turns off every plug in the room all at once. So those are options. Next slide. So now we're going to talk about the incentives. So Energy Trust of Oregon has incentives available for pretty much every type of utility customer. This includes industrial sites, farms, businesses, apartments, homeowners. If you're paying those utilities, there's a program of some sort available. So we're going to talk about new homes, and we have a new homes program that does provide some cash incentives to you. It is a rebate style program. So that money comes to you after the project, not up front. What it does is during your design stage, we're going to work with you and your designer to go through a checklist of items to make sure those are incorporated into your plans. And then during construction, excuse me, we'll actually come out and double check at a couple points that some of these things have been implemented, like duct sealing and insulation levels, because those are going to get hidden after the fact. We won't be able to see that those happened. But guess what? We're going to do one other thing to check that they happened. We do a blower door test. And so a blower door test basically puts a big rubber gasket over the door. Everything else is closed. You push air in and you see how much is leaking out of the building. And that tells us how well the builder did. And that's going to help determine what the cash incentive amount is that you will receive. The best way to get the most cash out of any of our programs, and I'll say this over and over, is contact us at the very earliest stage of design. That way you can make sure this is in there from the beginning and you're not trying to tweak it out later. Next slide. So out of this program, you're going to get a little document called an energy performance score. And you might have seen these on some new houses around. But basically, it's going to tell you about how much the utility cost is going to be for this unit. And that could be helpful to you for just what was being said about figuring out the rent plus the utility costs. It's going to do that. It should help make your unit more competitive. Not that that is really a problem in today's market. There are plenty of renters looking for everything that you guys are doing. So that's one aspect. Next slide. The incentives on new homes are fairly modest, I'll be honest. We put all our money into helping educate you with this checklist and participating with you through the process. The incentive cost range is only for buildings that are built better than code. You have to meet code. You didn't do anything extraordinary to get there. So we're looking to reward people that have risen over and above that. Excuse me. So at 5% better than code, you'll get $1,000. and it goes up to about $4,000. There's more bonus money there if you've made it solar ready. Excuse me. Meaning that you didn't install solar yet, but your electrical panel has the option for installing an inverter in the future. You also put in the piping and conduit so that when that is mounted on the roof, it can come into the house easily without drilling new holes and finding new pathways. So these type of bonuses can run you up an additional $5,000. Next. Nikki, I'm going to grab my water here. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. So this is Nikki with our Manufactured Homes program.
Hello. So yeah, my name is Nikki, and I have been one of the program navigators for the Manufactured Home Replacement Program for 3 full months. So this is still a relatively new position, but it is absolutely a gem of a program. So if you are considering, doing some development in a manufactured home park, this is definitely a program that you'll want to take advantage of. And I do have some flyers back there just to give a little more detail. But Heather gave some great advice, and that's kind of reach out to us early in the process. If you start thinking about, there's a home, it's past refurbishing, I want to just demo it and get another manufactured home put in there, then we can help you do that, especially if that home's most likely pretty old, energy inefficient. If you're going to replace it, we want you to replace it with an Energy Star home, and that's going to give you an incentive of up to $16,000. So it's quite worthwhile. It helps offset some costs, and it is available to developers. It is available to folks who own the home and are just replacing it. So there's a lot of good things there. So definitely reach out.
The next slide, just so you know. This was out of order. Sorry.
That's okay. We can go to the next one. Okay. So yeah. So there are some eligibility guidelines in terms of income. But with manufactured home parks, since the parks themselves have some affordability guidelines, it's available to pretty much everybody in the parks, including the developers. So also available to folks that are on their own land. And we also, within the program, not as much interest to developers, but we do also help with OHCS forgivable loan navigation so that we help rate in other funding. I won't go into that just because it's not as relevant. I just wanted to mention it, that we do a little bit more. But yeah, I think that covers the biggest part of this program that you'd want to know about. And then grab one of these forms if you happen to have an interest in doing development with manufactured homes, and it's going to give you some steps to follow.
Thanks, Nikki. That gave me a good break. Okay. So there are other programs out there. So if you have existing rental properties and you have existing single-family homes, incentives for updating existing buildings are higher than new buildings because you're going usually from a much lower current energy performance to better than code is what we're asking you to do. So there are a lot of different levels of incentives from us. Some of them are for income qualifications, whether you are a homeowner or a tenant. So there's a standard incentive rate, but then if you provide us some information about your income, we have a much higher incentive rate for, we call it savings within reach. For rental properties, we have an even higher incentive rate because we realize that you as the landlord, why should you care about putting in the really good stuff for your tenants? Well, we want you to care about that. So we're giving you a bit more money than our regular homeowner rates. This means if you happen to build a duplex and you live in half of the duplex and you have a tenant living in the other half of the duplex, you're going to get different incentive rates. You as the homeowner, it's going to be based on your income for your unit, and then the rental unit will get our rental unit rates that are higher. So that's a really good program that's helping address that not everybody can afford to stretch to do these things. So next slide. Incentives for retrofits cover everything we already talked about. They cover HVAC units, they cover insulation, they cover windows and water heaters. So all of those things have specific programs. Probably right now, one of the very best incentives across the board is insulation. It pretty much pays for itself. It covers all the cost up front in most circumstances, unless you have one of those crawl spaces that's only 10 inches high and somebody has to do extraordinary work, then it's not going to cover that full cost. But getting that extra insulation in an attic is probably one of the easier things to do, and it's very worthwhile. We've got great incentives available for that. If you want to go to the next one. Multifamily buildings that are above a triplex generally fall into commercial building codes. So they are a whole different level of codes out there, and we have a different program available for that. That program is called our New Buildings Program, but that also encompasses major renovations. So if you happened to do something like pick up one of the downtown properties that maybe has a store on the lower level but has nothing upstairs. There's a tremendous amount of these in downtown areas, in our older downtowns, and we're seeing people start to buy those and renovate those upper floors into rental units. That's usually a major renovation because there's a lot that has to happen there. It goes through our New Buildings Program. New Buildings programs have some money up front at the design stage available to help you cover the cost of meeting with the architect, the engineer, and some resource contractors to help you vet out how much more in construction costs is it going to cost me to put in the better HVAC system, the better windows, those type of things. We give some upfront money at that stage in the program. We also have this checklist kind of program, just like the new homes, where you can go through and just check off, I put in R35 or I put in R45, and it will tell you what will calculate out your incentive. So you can play with that Excel spreadsheet as well as consult your contractor, like, well, how much more is that going to cost me? And look how much it will pencil out in terms of money you will get back from Energy Trust. So all of those are options. It also helps cover if you're going to be really extraordinary and you wanted to go to net zero. And net zero basically means you are putting renewable energy systems on the building that are big enough to entirely offset all the energy use of the building. There would be, over the course of a year, no energy cost at all for the building. It kind of means that you'll earn a credit in the summer and then you'll use the credit in the winter usually, but there are some good incentives available for that. I'm going to go to the next slide. And those programs are set up because we realize there's a lot of differences in construction between what we call low-rise, which are often like townhome styles, to mid-rise, which might be a 3 or 4 story unit, to a high-rise. And those much bigger buildings, you have a lot more opportunities to do amazingly intricate systems, so there's a lot more incentive money available. Let me go to the next slide. Just like the home retrofit program that can be there for you with your existing properties, we also have programs available for helping you maintain these over time and retrofit them. So if the answer for you is to pick up an older property and improvement, we have several systems here that can help you with replacement of the appliances and provide some incentives for those, as well as water heaters, the HVAC systems, insulation, and windows. The windows right now on those multifamily properties, I think the incentive is $8 a square foot. So that's square foot of windows. That's very good. That is much higher than it is on the single family homes. And that's partly because we are focused on alleviating the energy burden for those tenants. So we're trying to make a really big impact in those scenarios. Next slide, please. So I think the biggest thing that I want to say is Energy Trust is statewide. We have 20 staff here in Southern Oregon. These are the folks here that are working on the programs that we talked about today. And the best thing to do, like I said, is when you think, I need to replace that, or I want to build that, call us and find out ahead of time what the requirements are for our programs. And a lot of times we have just a national database of qualified refrigerators online that you can look up, and then you can buy that and be assured that you're going to get the incentive amount. But if you don't look at it until after you bought it, it's a real pain, and you might not get the incentive. So I just want to say this is a great team of folks. Here's all their contact information, and I'm directory assistance. So if it still seems like I don't know who to call me. I'm down here in the lower right-hand corner, and I'm going to find out which program is the right fit for the property that you're talking about. And we didn't get into real specifics because there's a lot of variety in this room about what everybody's looking at and what they're building. But it's here. We have a website that's full of this information. There's a YouTube channel with lots more information on it. We also have an online home energy assessment tool that you can access there, and you can fill out what type of heating energy do I have, what type of furnace, how big is it, and it will run down and give you specifics for your project on what type of incentives you would qualify for. So that's a really cool tool. When it comes to multifamily, because that construction varies so much, Gretchen Grist, who is here, she can come out and help walk through your property and help you assess exactly what incentives you could qualify for at your property if it's a retrofit. So, can I answer any questions? Yeah.
For the existing multifamily incentives, is there a unit limit on like small multifamily, or is that all like 4 and up?
So the question was, for existing multifamily properties, is there a unit limit? There are some variations. There's not a limit per se. We have different programs available for duplexes and triplexes than we do for, let's say, an apartment building that has 10 or 20 units in it. So it doesn't exclude you. It just channels you into a certain type of program. Anything else? Yeah.
So color me a very satisfied Oregonian in reference to credits that I've gotten for upgrading my own HVAC system, electric vehicle, and charge. My question to you is, what are you proudest of? What has taken place recently? 26 years ago, I tried to get blown cellulose, and every developer in the area said, blown what? So just kind of curious if there anything new. I haven't checked out the website in a while.
Well, I suppose what's the newest is through the new homes program and us doing this checklist, we now can capture the variations and things like different types of insulation that you might use. I think it even has things like you can use recycled cotton batting. I mean, there's a ton of different types of insulation products out there. So there's different things that it can do to calculate what in particular you are working on. So we've tried to get more flexible as there's more and more products on the market all the time. We are always looking at new technologies that are out there. So just like Doug was saying earlier about programs varying, our programs do vary. We have a standard with the state that what we provide incentives for basically has to have a utility payoff back to you, usually within 10 years. So the energy savings has to make up for the additional cost within a 10-year time frame for us to provide an incentive. And so because cost is figuring into that, as costs change all the time, we have to kind of vary how much money we're awarding different projects. So they always change at the end of the year. But if you are already in the pipeline, like you're already signed up with us, we know you're working on it. What needs to happen in December is you call us and you go, I am not going to have this project done by December 31st. Can I lock in this amount? So make that phone call in December if you're planning on working with us, and we can do that in a lot of cases. Sometimes mid-year, if there's been a massive change in prices, we do make a mid-year adjustment. So again, it's the same type of thing. We usually have several weeks of notice, but if you're doing projects as you're getting near that finish point, give us a call again. So yeah, don't take a sheet that you picked up 4 years ago from us that has a specific price on it and think that that 4-year-old sheet is still the same numbers today. Any other questions?
Are some of them in the past you had to be a licensed installation contractor to do the installation and then get the qualification for the homeowner? Or can the homeowner do that now for themselves?
We do have some DIY programs available. They are less because when you're professionally doing it, we're factoring in the cost of the labor. So it comes back down to just the cost of the materials then when you're doing DIY installs. When it comes to HVAC, we do not allow that because there's usually refrigerants involved, and most homeowners aren't licensed to handle refrigerants. So you have to use a contractor in those situations. We do have a list of trade allies on our website. You do not necessarily have to use them. The trade allies do have some additional training with us, both in technology, but also in just filling out our forms and helping you do the paperwork that we require. So that's an option. It also, we do check their work. We will come out and take a look. So if you're at all worried, it's another set of eyes in addition to the building department taking a look at the installation is good. So that's a nice option. And I guess lastly, we have a sunsetting offering right now that might mean something to a lot of you. You'd have to jump very quickly. We have a landlord-provided cooling center that's available statewide. This can provide you an air conditioning unit or a heat pump for a common area at a multifamily property that can be used by your tenants as a cooling center whenever a heat advisory is declared in the state. So spaces like this that can be used might be a laundry room, you might have a community room, there might be just some other small room. It has to be big enough to allow 4 or 5 people to gather, and you have to be able to open that for people to use in a heat advisory situation. This covers $7,000 for a heat pump, and I think will completely cover the cost of an air conditioning unit. It sunsets September 30th, and that means it has to be installed and the application's filed. So you probably need to be on that this week if you're going to get on somebody's install list. So landlord provided cooling center, Gretchen is the one working with that program. So, and it's on our website as well, but it's a neat program. It came out of how many people died in the last few years with these heat waves that we've had, and the state is funding this one. Unlike our other programs are funded by the utilities. So we're kind of outside all the fluctuations we're seeing with the federal government. The utility funding is like 97% of our budget, and so it's pretty stable.
So people have stopped dying, so that's why they sunsetted it. Am I understanding that correctly?
It's been around for about 3 years, and the legislature allocates money like that, and if people don't take advantage of it, they yank it back. So there's still quite a bit of money left in the pool, but that is the sunset date that the legislature put on that fund. So, and they did not re-up it this year, along with a lot of other things that we all have heard about that didn't make it through the legislature. So it's going away September 30th. Doesn't mean it might not come back in a couple years, but that's where it's at. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam. So we were going to have Amber and myself talk. You want to do 5 minutes, or you want to just carry over to next?
I just want to show people really quickly how to get into some of the incentives that were mentioned earlier. I'll do a super quick presentation.
What do you want me to do? Website.
Just a city website, we have links. We actually have links to get people to Energy Trust as well. And the reason I want to make sure people know how to get to the city website is because incentives change quite frequently. So that gives us the opportunity to be a little bit more sure that you're getting up-to-date information. Microphone. I'll be super conscious of time because we're running a little bit over. So city website, and then you'll go up to departments and just hover, and down there, community development, as you scroll down a little bit, housing, right up there. So through here, this has quite a bit of information. It has information for you, it has information for your tenants, it has information for developers. So as you scroll down through here, you'll notice we have 3 tabs. I'm looking for housing, I want to build affordable housing, and homeownership resources. I don't know what the HIP is. So I want to build affordable housing. We'll click into that really quick. And as you scroll down, it's going to mention some of our programs. It's going to lead you to our housing developer update, which gives us kind of a information on where the housing market is in Grants Pass and what the city's hoping to see in terms of development, what our needs are in terms of types of housing, sizes of housing. So yep, we've got that pulled up. This is an annual report that gets done. So this goes into a bit of renter rates, our household sizes. We have a lot of single person households, but we don't have a lot of single bedroom units, stuff like that. So that's a good thing to keep an eye out for. And then back on the website, it also talks a little bit about our incentives. So the main thing to know with our city incentives, so SDC waivers, construction excise tax, to apply, we're either going to post a request for proposals, which is going to be newspaper posting, open application, time period, or you're going to call me directly, which my information will be on here as well. 99% of the time it's going to be a request for proposals. Construction excise tax is a specific window because we have specific money that builds up to a point, and then we open it when we ask for housing development. So that's what we want to make sure you're able to find. But this does also have resources. Homeownership resources does go into stuff like Energy Trust of Oregon. It goes into I want to be a homeowner, helping people to find down payment assistance programs or financial programs, different programs. If your tenants need things like accessibility ramp, Habitat for Humanity helps people build those. So stuff like that, you can help connect your tenants to resources, and a lot of those resources will work with you as a landlord to make sure your tenant has access to those resources. So this is good information. With our time being so short, this is the main part, but I do want to open it for questions, and I believe we will probably roll most of my presentation over into our next event. So any questions? See, I'm such a good speaker. All right, well, thank you. I'm going to pass it back to Doug to do a little closing statement.
Yeah, thank you, Amber. Yeah, so as Amber said, she and I are going to flex her presentation into the next event, which is August 26th. And the subject on that one is we're going to revisit the new land use code and how to take advantage of it. That is the sort of what started this event series, was trying to get that information out to the public about the changes that have happened in the last 4 or 5 years in the new land use code. So we're going to revisit that. We'll touch on Amber's presentation on city resources. And somebody asked about technical assistance, and that question, that best technical assistance is go straight to the building department and ask them. There's lots of times when I've gone in there and said, I think I want to be able to do this, can I do this? And they're great, they're very helpful. So when you're there and you're thinking you want to build something, don't be afraid to go into the building department and just say, here's my sketch, what do you think of this? It's the best thing there. Okay, so the next event will be August 26th again. There'll be land use code, and then we'll also do resources and what's available to see.
Will that be here?
Yes, same place, same time, August 26th, 6 p.m. here. Thank you, everyone.